I think we're about to go.
Yay! I hear that.
Hello, welcome to the Culture and Justice Reform podcast with me, SP Parker, and Emma Wells, who you're about to meet. Today we're talking to Patrick Graham, who's a very well-versed in the subject of false allegations and everything around it. And we'll have a short chat today. And we are, I'm going to hand over to Emma. Hello, Emma.
Hi, nice to see you two guys here. A bit about my background. In 2016, my partner at the time was, I believe, wrongly convicted due to the police investigation and everything that went on in and around it. And so for the last 6 years, I've been supporting the loved ones, not necessarily the defendant, but the loved ones of those who have been falsely accused, or in the later years, actually admitted their guilt. I've known Patrick for as long as I've been doing this, and me and Sean are relatively new friendship's been established here, but we're all singing from the same song sheet.
Let's talk to this without further ado. Let's talk to Patrick about what he knows about everything and where he can lead us, what he can tell us. Hello, Patrick.
Hello there, Sean. Hello, Emma. Nice to see you again after all these years. Most of my experience was of being falsely accused, and the horrific wake up that gave to the world in which we're now discussing. And I think, you know, the main reason that you wanted to talk to me is because I made the film We Believe You, which was interviews with people that I'd met online mainly, in various support groups for people who were falsely accused. And gradually I realized that it wasn't a matter of 10s or 20s or 50s or even hundreds, but thousands of people who were falsely accused of sex crimes. And the very nature of that was life destroying and witch hunt prompting, and all those horrific things which I'd experienced had happened to so many others. So I decided I had to make a film, which was one of my background really, was to do a film that would show people just how common it was, what the experience felt like, and why perhaps we needed to raise awareness of this going on. And you know, so I did ring around, I advertised, I said, if you've been falsely accused and you want to be in a film about it, please come forward. And obviously a load of people declined. They didn't want to be made public because they didn't want to be recognized, because they were still suffering persecution from witch hunters. And so I did get about 40 people who were willing and wanted to be in the film for some very good reasons and some horrible complications to do with contempt or illness. I didn't get everybody, and I have, I think, got a good balance in the film. If you see the film, you'll see that there's one retired priest, one sort of excommunicated priest, and one nun who was friends with Bill Clinton and Nelson Mandela and the Queen. So, you know, quite high up friends he had, who was also falsely accused of a sex crime against 2 young girls. And all of these people shared this feeling of shock, horror, and it can't possibly be happening. And then when you see the whole film, you'll see how those experiences progress to the realization that things are going to be that bad and that you have to fight back. And eventually, with most of us, I think we reach some kind of resolution. But I think it's a bit like being bereaved.
Oh, yes.
Anyone who says that time heals it, no, time just makes it easier to deal with. It doesn't heal it. It's still there. And that's the same with bereavement. You never really get fully over it. It's just diminished by the rest of your life experience.
Exactly. But I suppose the difference is that this is kind of coming from kind of other human beings, as opposed to bereavement, which is coming from God and nature. So it's other people doing that action, being supported by lots of authority figures, Emma.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Going back to the We Believe You documentary, Patrick, though, you've got some pretty high-profile people in and around that time who agreed to take part in the film. Johnny Fox, Mark Pearson, Liam Allen. Obviously, the reasons that they were in there was that there was a concurrent theme, that there was non-police disclosures, and also there was a number of reasons why they were all in there. Do you want to give us a little bit of background about these people and where they are now?
Well, it is interesting that Mark Pearson, who is the most obvious case of bizarre police and British Transport Police and other corruption, I can say publicly that they have now had to apologise and pay him six-figure compensation. But that took a long time and a lot of work. Then there's Roy Catchpole, whose death was caused from the cancer that came on him because of the false accusations. And I know of several others not in the film for whom that's also true. I don't know what Sister Frances is doing now, but as a direct result of her false accusations, the hospice for young people, the only one in the country for adolescents, that closed down because the charitable funds disappeared.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So those false accusers managed to close down a service for 24 adults.
Nobody wins there, do they? Who wins in that situation? I really can't think. But...
No one won that one. And Sister Frances is lovely. You know, she's almost too forgiving.
I know well. Yeah, she's a lovely person. Yeah.
But the others.
John is trying to get his recording career back on track.
Yeah, but I mean, he lost massively because
big time.
Huge record deal, international tours. He'd been 3 tours, and you know the witch hunt against him really quickly closed off all those avenues. He got the worst of cancel culture. He really did. And
go on, that's interesting.
Yeah,
because if you're a musician, you're a public figure, you're immediately in the gang of the people who you know should be in prison. They're all the public jumps on that. You know, it's the Jimmy Savile, Gary Glitter. You're in that gang. You know, you don't want to be in it gang.
No, you don't.
But you'd have no choice with being denied access to publicity and futures.
His complaints were very vocal too, though. You've got to remember that you know they were very public you know. There were no holds pulled. You know, it was awful what happened to Johnny in the respect that it was so publicised.
It was a well-organised witch hunt.
It was awful.
You know, they went about it in a coordinated fashion. Yeah, and that's not that rare. And you know, if you're a celebrity, I think you do get a different type of risk factor that comes in, and it can be that the blow up of a witch hunt is fast and furious. Whereas with us ordinary citizens, it tends to be more organic, but it can still be as bad. I know of people who've had to move towns because of their children being falsely accused, and all the kids in the school say he's the rapist. And that's it. You can't live with that, you know. And some of them don't. Some of them commit suicide. But moving towns has been the only option for some of those families. The way the families suffer is massive and unpublicized generally. But obviously, I mean, I made We Believe You to focus on the falsely accused. I could have made another whole film, and I wanted to, about the wrongly imprisoned. Was going to be called At Her Majesty's Displeasure. And I've got some footage of people. I needed a successful appeal in there. That would have been a key thing to make the film something other than heartbreakingly disappointing. But also it's very hard legally to make a documentary about the wrongfully imprisoned and declare that they are. You have to keep balancing it in legal terms, you know. And I unfortunately ran out of energy more than anything. It was such hard work. I traveled all around Britain making that film. I mean, there was a lot of driving. I drove something like 10,000 miles making that film. And with Matt, the cameraman, we went all over the place. And I don't think I can face doing quite that much work again. I'm
No.
66, you know.
Yeah.
It's getting to the point, but I wouldn't mind doing something. You know, I wouldn't mind doing something.
Mm.
Glad to hear that. I will do them for time, Sean.
Go on, no, we're fine. Halfway through, something like that.
All right.
Got another like kind of 18 minutes if you're
18
quarter past
minutes.
6 things through.
18 minutes.
It'll suddenly cut off again like it did before, won't it?
I hope not. Yeah.
No. Shan't happen again.
Let's return back to obviously in the previous discussion we were discussing Mark Pearson trial and James Barnett's involvement in that, because I think that is quite an interesting topic. I think we were having around that. So can we just try and revisit that from memory?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, is it sort of possible to give it kind of a brief outline just before you talk about
what Mark Pearson's case was?
Yeah.
Which was the magic fingering. Apparently, the CCTV footage that they went on, you could just about make out this bald-headed man passing this deeply disturbed actress, who said that whilst he was passing her, he somehow managed, despite him having a strap of his bag in one hand and a newspaper in the other, to get his hand up under her long skirt, penetrate her with his fingers, withdraw and go again, without letting go of the newspaper or the bag, in under 0.5 of a second.
Bit more detail than I was expecting. Okay, yeah.
That's how freaking far-fetched that case was.
Yes, it's ridiculous.
It was so ridiculous that even as I was filming, I wanted to say, stop, you must be lying. This can't be true.
Right. It's all true.
The CPS took that case and ran with it, but they did try and slow the footage down of the CCTV so it looked like he took 2 seconds to go past her and not the 0.5 seconds that was the reality.
Right.
Not that in the real world that would make any difference, because in 2 seconds you still can't magically chuck bags in the air, get up under someone's skirt, get out again, catch the bag and the newspaper and walk on.
Mm-hmm.
It's not possible.
No, very visual though. Good example. So, okay, so and of course we that gets talked about a little bit in the film, and it's very interesting. I remember now. What's Mr. Pearson's up to now? Is he better? Are things going well for him?
I hope they're going well for him. He has at least got some serious cash to try and help make it go better, because he did win his case, but he was an artist, so he didn't have that thing of losing employment that so many of us have had. But he certainly, psychologically, I think it damaged him permanently. I think it damages all of us permanently.
Well,
it's a question of how you cope with the damage, and I don't know how he's coped with the damage. Maybe it comes out in his art. I haven't seen any of it since then.
That's the upside, possibly, as we're told anyway. It'll all come out in the writing. It'll be great. Yes.
Yeah.
Next, Emma.
So moving on to we spoke about that earlier on. Now I'm struggling a little
We
bit.
haven't got that on tape.
Victim before verdict. No.
Victim before verdict.
Verdict. That was a very key question, because it's a relatively new concept that's been given to me. I mean, obviously it's been the forefront of my mind for the 6 years that I've been doing what I've been doing, but it makes an awful lot of sense when it's put into just those 3 little words. That it is exactly the case, and what has been going on is victim before verdict. Have you got anything that you...
Well, yes, which was the whole reason I titled the film We Believe You, because that culture of when someone makes an accusation, if you say we believe you, I can understand that that's just as a welcome through the door, yes, but that any serious investigator should also have in the back of their mind, but I'm going to investigate thoroughly and find out whether you're telling the truth or not. But that's not the culture that came about. The culture was, here, come on in and sign these forms for compensation, because the thing people don't know about that is you'll only get compensation if you cooperate with the police. That's why they help you with the forms. because once you've signed that with them, they can then say, oh, well, you've made your statement, but we'd like you to just change the dates on here a little bit. Is that okay? But if you don't agree with us, then I'm afraid your compensation's going out the window. So, you know, and how many cases have there been where the dates have been changed because turns out the victim, the real victim, the person accused of rape, has a perfect alibi. Oh, it wasn't that day, was it? It was another day instead. In my case, it was 2 imaginary dates at some 6-year period.
Right.
That's how precise.
Compensation aside, I think the point that I was trying to make was that back in the day, Keir Starmer was responsible for initiating this, you know, the victim culture. Like, elaborate a little bit more, discuss that a little bit more, that'd be great.
Yeah, because it was him that prompted the whole "we believe you" status, which meant that yes, a lot more victims came forward, but unfortunately, a lot of them were wannabe victims rather than real victims. And as long as in court, people, and in the whole process of arrest, charging, they were referred to as victims. As soon as you say that, you're effectively giving a guilty verdict. Because that's, you know, they're not victims. And we know that of the 63,000 who complained last year, a maximum of 15,000 may have been victims. The rest are not. But the culture is such, this calling someone the victim before there's a verdict is always wrong, every time. And yet we are still living in that world. We still see that going on. Newspapers, TV, you know, they talk about victims' rights. Vera Beard, she's always talking about victims in the wrong sense and has no idea how many victims she's helped to create, which is what happens as a result of this.
Yeah, but we discussed earlier as well about media sway, and that all of these negative stories that are constantly just bombarded with negatives about this person's done this, even way before they've even been put on trial. You know, you're guilty way before then, and it's causing problems, to my mind, of media, of jury sway and bias way before they're even getting to a courtroom and sat down. They're already have got a well-formed opinion of what a paedophile is and what a rapist is, and they're not in any position to be making the judgments that they are, which is my opinion. How do you feel about that yourself, Patrick?
I know that the culture is exactly that. If I studied for a while the BBC and the Guardian, who I consider the 2 prime industry types, the victim industry supporters, and they would try and put out 2 stories a week on how rape victims are not being heard, or there are more than you thought, or there's all the various stories that reinforce the idea that there are masses of rape victims out there, that every man is an abuser, all this. And it was very noticeable that on the day Carl Beech got sentenced for perverting the course of justice, within 2 hours of that verdict, the Guardian had put up for the 4th time the same story about failing to prosecute rape victims.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And I thought, well, hang on a second, why are you doing that? Well, could it be that you don't want anyone to hear the truth about false accusations? Could that possibly be the case? Of course it is.
Is it possible to just ask for an explanation of Mr. Carl Beech? You talked about him. What's the story there?
Carl Beech was the famous Nick, known as Nick, character who the police said were credible and true when he made up stories about Harvey Procter.
Who's that?
Harvey Procter is an MP. And then there were loads of others he accused, all high up people. Leon Britton, several others. And he fantasized about a place where he'd been repeatedly taken and raped by these very important, powerful men. And the police came out and said they thought his stories were credible and true. It turns out they weren't. and that many of the things he said were provably not true. And eventually he ran away to Norway.
Yeah.
He got compensation money, bought himself a nice Mustang. Yeah.
You got, yeah.
Maximum amount virtually. Yeah. And well, he got caught, didn't he? And the whole table turned because it was so clearly and obviously on a high profile case where the celebrities involved bit back. They bit back hard, and the police were forced to retract. So when he eventually got prosecuted for perverting the course of justice, it was big news in our community, because he got sent down, a bit like Gemma Beale. She's another case where someone who had tried to accuse 8 different people, I think, and 2 of them had gone to jail. And then the police realized, you know, and the CPS boasted, by the way, when she got sent down, they boasted of what a good job they'd done.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
And I was thinking, it was you who prosecuted the 2 innocent men who were in jail. So don't think you should be boasting, really. It's not clever, you know. Should be apologizing profusely. You know?
Thank you. No, so interesting stuff. What's the status of the place that we're at now? How, after Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, let me just chuck that in there, when it comes to actresses talking and not being paid compensation, we're not going to take a side on that story, of course, though I loved What's Eating Gilbert Grape. What's your opinion now, where we are, where we might go?
I think there's an interesting comparison with America and Britain, because you, of course, Johnny lost in this country but won in America. And I think one of the things is that over in America there was a louder, an actress-led Me Too movement, but there's also a louder anti-cancel culture and anti-woke movement, if you like, and those things have been bashing against each other for quite a while. In this country, I think we're still far too subservient to the BBC and Guardian tendency to say, you know, whatever happens, we're failing the rape victims. So, and there are very few people who are falsely accused. I don't think that's going to wash forever, because the numbers are just becoming more and more public. And I actually interviewed, you know, had some correspondence with Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter, who is probably the kingpin of statistical analysis in this country.
Mr. COVID himself.
Yeah, he was big on that. And I showed him the figures of the crime survey of England and Wales and the police arrests, and he went, there is an anomaly there. I said, well, be careful who you tell, because you will get cancelled if you publicise this too loudly. And he said, yes, he realised that was an issue.
Right.
Yeah.
What exactly about it kind of is an issue in your mind? Kind of how could you conceptualize that issue? What is the problem?
The issue is that of all the people who go to the police saying they've been raped, over half of them are lying.
Half.
Over half. It's a minimum of 50%. It's probably more like 70%, but it's definitely above 50%. And the industry and others can't stand that idea. They say it's 2% or less. And that's a figure plucked out of the air by Susan Brownmiller in 1984.
Who's that?
She wrote a book about rapes, an American writer, and she figured 2%. I think she chose 2% because 0% would not be believable.
No.
So they picked 2 as a small number that people would hang on to and believe. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting. Emma?
Can we return to that? I would like to talk a little bit more about juries, because I thought that was very good where there were suggestions made about
5 minutes on juries.
Mastermind. But yeah.
We are all agreed that the jury system is perilous, and I think my idea, there are lots of others, is that we need juries to have at least 4 experts by experience on them, not the random 12 that we currently have, because the fact is that the random 12 who've all been being fed the stories over and over again come with prejudices, and the court is prejudiced. So those prejudices all align to make them feel as though they are not. But in fact, they are. And when you have he said, she said cases, they're inclined to say, oh, well, the nasty man did the nasty thing to this lovely sounding good actress woman.
Because he's sitting over there and he looks like it. Yeah.
And he's locked in a cage. Whoa, he's guilty. And of course, she is the victim and he is the accused.
Well, she's not even in court. She's sat in a room somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, on a nice little video setup.
Which is fine. Don't get me wrong. That is the way that it should be to protect anybody who's been had such terrible thing happen to them.
But some say that it's actually a disadvantage.
Who isn't already tuned in, a new jury member, or any jury, but somebody who isn't already honed into how it works. Your first day in a jury, you're going to be sat there thinking, of course he's done it. Why is he behind that glass case, and why is she hidden away? It just, I think the whole premise of it is wrong, and
that's the drama, isn't it, Emma? It's the grand thing they have to present for.
And you've got the guy with the wig on, and you've got,
and of course, everybody has seen TV dramas featuring courtrooms and juries making decisions, and it's nothing like the truth.
No, it isn't. No, it isn't.
And people have no idea that it isn't. They really believe that that's how it's going to be. And when you sit in a jury room, as I have done,
me too,
and realize that 90% of the people in there are stupid and gullible.
I wouldn't say that, Patrick. You can't say. The stupid is a bit of a strong.
Well, maybe 90%'s unfair, but if you're saying that, if you're saying what's the proportion?
Gullible and definitely entering into a situation with bias and the excitement of it all. It's a bit of an honour, really, to be asked to decide the fate of somebody else.
That's so interesting. That's a very interesting point.
Randomised, isn't it?
True, though. Yeah. I'd sat on a jury in the same court that saw my partner at the time wrongly convicted. 15 months later, I sat in the same courtroom with the same judge, and he said, she said, sexual assault allegation trial. Whether you need to edit that out or not, it's key. And as I'd sat on the opposite side of the courtroom and I'd watched the jury members and then became a member of the jury, watching his female partner sat on the other side. It's an important, pertinent part of the book. An amazing, I can't imagine many people have been through that experience, especially with the same judge.
No.
The people who were on my jury were not fit. We're not, and you may have to edit this out, but they weren't fit to be any of them. But they weren't stupid. They were clueless. They had no idea about being sat on that other side. They had no idea.
Well, okay. My definition of stupid is probably a little bit broader and looser than yours.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, chaps, we're going to have to wrap it up because of you know what. So fascinating. We're going to link to the film. Anybody watching this is down below somewhere. Watch that. It's a brilliant film. Support the people, or just watch them. Don't support them. There's no bias here. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Patrick. We're going to sign off. Watch you next time.
See you guys soon.
All the best.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Keep the faith.
Yeah.